Hi, 8th grade. It is now Tuesday. It's time for our second class together this week, and we're going to read night first, so please get out your night book. We are going to read pages 17 to 22, so please annotate along with me as we read. Remember, pause me when you need to, and then come back and keep learning. We are going to start at the bottom of page 16. Yesterday when we read together, what happened was that they consolidated all of the Jewish people, made them all live in one neighborhood together that they had gated off and they had sealed the windows out of. And after they had done that, the next step was that they started lining people up on the street saying they were going to liquidate the ghetto, which remember that means they were going to empty it, they were going to get all the people out of it, and they're taking the Jews somewhere. Remember, in the book, they have no idea where they're going. They said only one person does, the Jewish council president, but that if he tells them, his punishment would be death, which I have noticed has been the punishment for everything so far. If you don't wear the star, you get shot. If you don't give away all of your golden belongings, you get shot. If you break the curfew, all of those edicts that we read about yesterday. So things are definitely getting a bit more dire for Ellie and his family. Today, we are going to start off at that bottom part of the page, and we are going to pause for some things I want you to think about. Remember, after we reread or while we're reading, you can pause as well. You're doing the comprehension questions that you have on page 27. As the questions come up, you're answering them. Remember to use tag. Kareem did a really great thing yesterday. He answered the questions on a Google Doc and then shared it with me. Very smart. I was able to look at them, able to give him some feedback on those as well. So whatever you make, wherever you write your stuff, share it with me, and I'll tell you how smart you are. Here we go. At last, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, came the signal to leave. There was joy. Yes, joy. People must have thought there could be no greater torment in God's hell than of being stranded here on the sidewalk among the bundles in the middle of the street under the blazing sun. Anything seemed preferable to that. They began to walk with another glance at the abandoned streets, the dead, empty houses, the gardens, the tombstones. On everyone's back there was a sack, in everyone's eyes tears and distress. Slowly, heavily, the progression advanced towards the gate of the ghetto. And there I was on the sidewalk, watching them file past, unable to move. Here came the chief rabbi, hunched over, his face strange looking without a beard, a bundle on his back. His very presence in the procession was enough to make the scene seem surreal. It was like a page torn from a book, a historical novel perhaps, dealing with the captivity in Babylon or the Spanish Inquisition. They passed by me, one after the other, my teachers, my friends, the others, some of whom I had once feared and some of whom I had found ridiculous. All those lives I had shared for years. There they went, defeated, their bundles, their lives in tow, having left behind their homes and their childhood. They passed by me like beaten dogs, with never a glance in my direction. They must have envied me. The procession disappeared around the corner. A few steps more, and they were beyond the ghetto walls. The street resembled fairgrounds, deserted in haste, and there was a little of everything. Suitcases, briefcases, bags, knives, dishes, banknotes, papers, faded portraits. All the things that one planned to take along and then finally left behind. They had ceased to matter. Open rooms everywhere. Gaping doors and windows looked out into the void. It belonged to everyone, since it no longer belonged to anyone. It was there for the taking, an open tomb, a summer sun. Thinking about a tomb, Ellie just described the streets as an open tomb. So what is a tomb? A tomb is where people are buried. So we're talking about death already. And we're talking about the possessions left over. I want you to also consider why the sentence "a summer sun" is there at the end for you to consider too. We had spent the day without food, but we were not really hungry. We were exhausted. My father had accompanied the deportees as far as the ghetto's gate. They had first been herded through the main synagogue, where they were thoroughly searched to make sure that they were not carrying away any gold, silver, or any other valuables. There had been incidents of hysteria and harsh blows. "When will it be our turn?" I asked my father. "The day after tomorrow, unless things work out. A miracle, perhaps." I want you to pause right there and think. People are being taken. People are being taken to go to the synagogue to get searched and then to go we know where, but they don't. And Ellie's dad is still optimistic. He still thinks that there is a miracle that could possibly happen. And I want you guys to remember that and to maybe take note of that optimism being a recurring theme so far from these first sections. Where were the people being taken? Did anyone know yet? No, the secret was well kept. Night had fallen. That evening we went to bed early, and my father said, "Sleep peacefully, children. Nothing will happen until the day after tomorrow, Tuesday." Monday went by like a small summer cloud, like a dream in the first hours of dawn. Intent on preparing our backpacks, on baking breads and cakes, we no longer thought about anything. The verdict had been delivered. That evening, our mother made us go to bed early, to conserve our strength, she said. It was to be the last night spent in our house. I was up at dawn. I wanted to have time to pray before leaving. My father had risen before all of us to seek information in town. He returned around 8 o'clock. Good news. We were not leaving town today. We were only moving to the Small Ghetto. That's where we would wait for the last transport. We would be the last to leave. At 9 o'clock, the previous Sunday's scenes were repeated. Policemen, wielding clubs, were shouting, "All Jews outside!" We were ready. I went out first. I didn't want to look at my parents' faces. I did not want to break into tears. We remained sitting in the middle of the street like the others 2 days earlier. The same hellish sun, the same thirst, only there was no one left to bring us water. Remembering that Ellie and his sister, they're the ones who brought water to everybody else. But now there's nobody left to take care of them because it's almost over. They're almost all taken out. Briefly, I want you to remember, if you have a highlighter with you, I want you to highlight every time that we're talking about night, day, dawn, sunset, anything that has to do with time of day, because we're going to find that some of our most interesting figurative language and symbolism is going to come from the use of the word night and dawn. So keep track of that, annotate it up special. If you've got Post-its, you could stick a Post-it on there too. I looked at my house in which I had spent years seeking my God, fasting to hasten the coming of the Messiah, imagining what my life would be like later. Yet, I felt little sadness. My mind was empty. "Get up! Roll call!" We stood. We were counted. We sat down. We got up again. Over and over. We waited impatiently to be taken away. What were they waiting for? Finally, the order came. "Forward! March!" My father was crying. It was the first time I saw him cry. I had never thought it possible. As for my mother, she was walking, her face a mask, without a word, deep in thought. I looked at my little sister, Tispora, her blonde hair neatly combed, her red coat over her arm, a little girl of 7. On her back, a bag too heavy for her. She was clenching her teeth. She already knew that it was useless to complain. Here and there, the police were lashing out with their clubs. "Faster!" I had no strength left. The journey had just begun, and I already felt so weak. "Faster, faster! Move, you lazy good-for-nothings!" the Hungarian police were screaming. That was when I began to hate them, and my hatred remains our only link today. They were our first oppressors. They were the first faces of hell and death. They ordered us to run. We began to run. Who would have thought that we were so strong? From behind their windows, from behind their shutters, our fellow citizens watched as we passed. I want you guys to visualize that. The Christians that are in that neighborhood who they went to school with and worked with a week ago are looking out of their windows, watching the Jews being forced to run down the street with their possessions on their backs. It's crazy. We finally arrived at our destination. Throwing down our bundles, we dropped onto the ground. Oh God, Master of the universe, in your infinite compassion, have mercy on us. The Small Ghetto. Only 3 days ago, people were living here. People who owned the things that we are using now. They had been expelled, and we had already forgotten all about them. So when Ellie's family got moved from the big ghetto to the small ghetto, they basically just moved into any available house and started using the beds and sofas and everything that was in there because the people that owned that house had already been taken off to the camps. Picture how strange that must have felt for them. The chaos was even greater here than in the large ghetto. Its inhabitants evidently had been caught by surprise. I visited the rooms that had been occupied by my Uncle Mendel's family. On the table, a half-finished bowl of soup, a platter of dough waiting to be baked. Everywhere on the floor, there were books. Had my uncle meant to take them along? We settled in. What a word! I went looking for wood, my sisters lit a fire. Despite her fatigue, my mother began to prepare a meal. We cannot give up, we cannot give up, she kept repeating. People's morale was not so bad. We were beginning to get used to the situation. There were those who even voiced optimism. The Germans were running out of time to expel us, they argued. Tragically, for those who had already been deported, it would be too late. As for us, chances that we would be allowed to go on with our miserable little lives until the end of the war. The ghetto was not guarded. One could enter and leave as one pleased. Maria, our former maid, came to see us. Sobbing, she begged us to come with her to her village, where she prepared a safe shelter. My father wouldn't hear of it. He told me and my big sisters, if you wish, go there. I shall stay here with your mother and the little one. Naturally, we refused to be separated. That is an example, again, of someone who wasn't Jewish, who was trying to resist the leadership. Maria was trying to take them and hide them away. If you guys have read the book White Bird, that graphic novel by the author of Wonder, that's an experience that happens in there of people being hidden from the Nazis. We have 2 more pages of this little section before you go to your comp questions. We're on the top of page 21. Night. No one was praying for the night to pass quickly. The stars were but sparks of the immense conflagration that was consuming us. Were this conflagration to be extinguished one day, nothing would be left in the sky but extinct stars and unseeing eyes. There was nothing else to do but to go to bed, in the beds of those who had moved on. We needed rest to gather our strength. At daybreak, the gloom had lifted. The mood was more confident. There were those who said, "Who knows? They may be sending us away for our own good. The front's getting closer. We shall soon hear the guns, and surely the civilian population will be evacuated." They worry lest we join the partisans. As far as I'm concerned, this whole business of deportation is nothing but a big farce. Don't laugh. They just want to steal our valuables and jewelry. They know it's all been buried, and they have to go and dig it out. It's so much easier to do while the owners are on vacation. On vacation? This kind of talk that nobody believed helped pass the time. A few days that we spent here went by pleasantly enough, in relative calm. People rather got along. There no longer was any distinction between the rich and the poor, the notables and the others. We were all people condemned to the same fate, still unknown. Saturday, the day of rest, was chosen for our expulsion. Remember, in the Jewish faith, Saturday is their holy day. How like Sunday's our holy day and we go to church on Sunday and you spend time with your family or whatever. For the Jewish community, Saturday is their day of worship, and it's called the Sabbath. The night before, we had sat down to the traditional Friday night meal. We had said the customary blessings over the bread and the wine and swallowed the food in silence. We sensed that we were gathered around the familial table for the last time. I spent that night going over memories and ideas as I was unable to fall asleep. At dawn, we were in the street, ready to leave. This time, there were no Hungarian police. It had been agreed that the Jewish council would handle everything by itself. Our convoy headed towards the main synagogue. The town seemed deserted. Behind shutters, our friends of yesterday were probably waiting for the moment when they could loot our homes. Loot means to rob or steal. So what Ellie is saying right there is the non-Jews who are watching them leave, who were their friends yesterday, he thinks that they're going to go and just try to rob all their stuff out of their houses because they know that they aren't going to be needing them anymore. It's really sad. The synagogue resembled the large railroad station, baggage and tears. The altar was shattered. The wall coverings were shredded. The walls themselves were bare. There were so many of us that we could hardly breathe. The 24 hours that we spent there were horrendous. So on this day, they walked from the small ghetto to the synagogue, where they're going to stay in the synagogue until it's time for them to get on the trains. So far, a lot of people have already been in the synagogue because remember, Ellie and his family are going last. So this is what it looks like there. The men were downstairs, the women upstairs. It was Saturday, the Sabbath, and it was as though we were there to attend services. Forbidden to go outside, people relieved themselves in the corner. Relieved meaning went to the bathroom. They didn't have access to bathrooms. The next morning we walked towards the station where a convoy of cattle cars was waiting. The Hungarian police made us climb into the cars, 80 persons in each one. They handed us some bread and a few pails of water. They checked the bars on the windows to make sure that they would not come loose. The cars were sealed. One person was placed in charge of every car. If someone managed to escape, that person would be shot. 2 Gestapo officers strolled down the length of the platform. They were all smiles. All things considered, it had gone very smoothly. A prolonged whistle pierced the air. The wheels began to grind. We were on our way. You should be able to answer all the questions on page 27 at this point and complete your graphic organizer for page 26. Good luck, guys. See you soon for vocab. Bye.